Debbie, Sandy, and Pepe by Merrill Corney. Debbie ran down the path beside the house. Look, Sandy, come and have a look at this. She knelt beside the little bundle of feathers on the ground and gently touched it with her finger. Sandra appeared beside her. It's a baby bird, she said. It might have fallen from its nest, and she craned her neck upwards to search the tree above their heads. Poor little thing, crooned Debbie as she stroked the shivering bundle. Your mother must be so worried. She scooped it up in one hand, and straightway it spread its tiny half-feathered wings and tried to fly. Its beak opened wide, and it let out a squeaking much louder than you would expect from such a small body. Look at its beak, Sandra said, laughing. It's so big. It looks like yellow plastic, giggled Debbie. She wriggled her finger like a worm, and the little creature snapped harmlessly at her. Debbie stood up. We had better find its nest and put it back, she said. They searched every tree and bush in the garden, but there was no sign of a nest. No mother bird's cry of alarm broke the afternoon stillness. Perhaps he fluttered here from somewhere else, suggested Sandra, and his mother couldn't find him. Debbie cradled him against her chest. Well, we'll just have to look after him ourselves then, she said. We'll make a soft nest for him and feed him, and when he grows up, he'll stay in our garden. They spent the rest of the afternoon caring for the bird. They chose the old letter box in the hedge for a nest. It was part of the front fence, but the cypress hedge had grown over it so that the postman could not reach it. Now he put the mail in the new box shaped like a house that sat on the gatepost. The girls half filled the old box with dry grass clippings. It made a soft, comfortable nest. The half-fledged, ugly little creature nestled down with eyes closed, then jerked its beak open and squawked for food. What do you think he eats, Sandy? Worms? I reckon. They dug up worms with a garden trowel and deposited them in a squirming heap on the path. Sandra looked doubtfully at the writhing mass of worms busily trying to tie themselves in knots. They should really be mashed up, shouldn't they? She asked. I can't do it. You do it, Sandy, Debbie said, shuddering. Perhaps we could use Mom's blender. Sandra's eyebrows shot up with the effort of producing such a good idea. Yuck, that's revolting. And think of the poor worms. Debbie put her hands on her hips. He'll just have to learn to eat them whole. Sandra held the twisting worm close to his beak. He snapped it up, closed his eyes, and swallowed, but the worm fell out, unharmed. Maybe they eat other things as well, said Debbie in a worried voice. They thought for a minute. I bet he's the type that eats flies and mozzies, announced Sandra. And grass, seeds, and things, added Debbie. By the time Mom called them in to tea, they had collected quite a supply of insects and seeds. The bird did his best to eat something, but it was hard to tell if anything went down or not. Sandy felt in her pocket and brought out a dusty piece of chocolate. She broke off a teeny piece with her fingernail. Try this, she said, and pushed it up into his open beak. He didn't seem to like it much, so she ate the rest. They filled a bottle top with water and placed it carefully in a corner so that it would not spill, and bedded him down for the night. He seemed quite content in his letterbox nest. Good night, Pepe, whispered Debbie. How do you know his name's Pepe? Asked Sandra. I don't. He just makes a noise like that, said Debbie, and closed down the lid of the box. They told Mom all about him at tea time and took her out to see him. When he grows, can we keep? Yes, Mom, We could get a cage for him, Sandra added. Birds are happier outside, being free, said their mum. He wouldn't be happy inside a cage. Debbie lay awake a long time that night. She could remember how warm and soft he was, how fragile and delicate his bones felt under the feathers, rather ugly, and that oversized yellow plastic beak taking up all his face. But she knew that when he grew up, he would be very handsome. He would live in the garden, and every morning and evening he would come pecking on her window. She would let him in, and he would fly around the room, then settle on her shoulder and feed from her hand. I could tie notes to his legs and send messages to my friends, like they used to do with pigeons during the war, she thought. It made her feel warm and sleepy and excited and contented all at the same time. Pepe didn't seem to have eaten any of his food when they visited him the next morning. He just put his head on one side and winked at them with his bright little eyes when they peered into the box. Debbie couldn't concentrate on her lessons that day. Her mind was filled with plans for Pepe. She and Sandra met behind a shelter shed at lunchtime and spent most of the break searching for fresh worms, insects, and seeds. When the final bell rang that afternoon, Debbie was the first to the door. Mrs. Atkins's hand fell heavily on her shoulder. What's the hurry, Debbie? Oh, please, please, Mrs. Atkins, I have to get home fast to feed this baby bird we found yesterday. She had to explain it all to Mrs. Atkins, and by the time she raced out of the door, the playground was nearly deserted. Where have you been, Deb? Sandra was swinging upside down on the monkey bars. I've been waiting for ages. And she swung herself over and neatly landed on her feet. Have you got the worms? Debbie showed her the box banging up and down in her school bag as they hurried out through the gate. When they got home, she unslung the bag from her shoulder and pulled out the box of feed. Here comes your tea, Pepe, she said as she pushed her way into the hedge. Is he chirping? Sandra wriggled in beside her. There was no sound as she lifted the lid off the letterbox. He must be asleep, said Debbie. Here, hold the box a minute. And she passed the precious food store to Sandra. The little bird lay on his side on the straw. His eyes and beak were shut. Come on, little Pepe, whispered Debbie. Time to wake up. She reached in and gently slid her hand under the tiny body and lifted him out. He was cold and stiff. Oh no, she wailed. He's dead. Let's have a look. Sandra touched the bird's head. Yep, he's dead all right. Probably starved, I reckon. He hasn't eaten his food at all. She paused. Where are we going to bury him? Debbie turned on her. Don't you even care? She shouted. He was just a little baby. He was going to be our own special pet, and now he's dead. I bet it was that chocolate you tried to feed him with that killed him. And she burst into tears. It's not my fault, Sandra shouted. It probably would have died anyway. You're just stupid. You cry about everything. You even cried when Mom threw boiling water on the ants. And Sandra stamped angrily inside. Debbie knew it was true. She couldn't bear to think of anything suffering or dying. Mom said she was too soft-hearted for her own good. She wrapped the little bird in a tissue she found in her pocket, laid him under the hedge, and covered him with fallen leaves. Goodbye, Pepe, she whispered, then turned, and still sobbing, went into the house dragging her feet. Whatever is the matter, Deb? Mom said, looking up from the stove where she was preparing dinner. Sandra told me about the bird. They are awfully hard to rear, Debbie. She put her arms around her daughter. Lots of them die. It's silly to get so upset about it. A big girl like you. Mom didn't understand, thought Debbie. It wasn't so much that things die, but that no one seemed to care. Not like she did. It felt like a great weight on her heart. The little bird hadn't even had time to learn to fly. A small hope entered her mind. Do birds go to heaven, Mum? Her mother held her at arm's length and looked at her. Goodness, what a question. How do I know? I don't even know if there is a God or not. Now, dry your eyes and stop thinking about it. She smiled at her and gave her a kiss on the forehead. Go and turn the calendar over for me. It's the first day of spring tomorrow. Debbie dried her eyes and, still sniffing, went to the calendar hanging on the wall above the sink. The new month had the usual pretty countryside scene. Debbie glanced at it and was about to turn away when she noticed for the first time a few lines of writing under the photograph. She bent closer and read, "Are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 pennies? Yet not one of them is forgotten by God." Not one of them? Debbie stared out through the window. God knew every sparrow? The blue sky above the fence suddenly filled with a wheeling crowd of pigeons. A blackbird in the wattle tree tilted back his head and poured his song into the air against the background music of sparrows squabbling under the eaves. So many birds, millions of them, and yet God knew and cared about each one. I'm not the only one who cares then. God, I'm 17, thought Debbie. There's me and you. And suddenly, it didn't seem to matter anymore whether Pepe had gone to heaven or not. If God really cared, then everything would be all right. She looked again at the calendar. The Bible quotation went on. Indeed, the very hairs of your head are numbered. Don't be afraid. You are worth more than many sparrows. With her ears full of bird song and the beating of many wings, Debbie ran and hugged her surprised mother. Don't worry, Mum, she grinned. Then, calling Sandra, she bounced down the back steps to play.